Hey guys, hello everyone, welcome back. So today I wanted to make a short review and game analysis and some interesting moments from my recent tournament, my most recent tournament. So I've played in this Blitz tournament a couple of days ago. I just decided that I didn't play for a while. I wanted to to move some real pieces after you know these days teaching a lot through online. I'm mainly moving pieces on the computer, on the monitor, and actually sitting over the board and playing some actual real chess game. When you see your opponent and you shake his hand, it's a different atmosphere, a different environment. It feels much better to me. So I wanted to show you some interesting moments from this tournament. In this tournament, we had 6 rounds. This time I was the first seed by rating, but we had at least 2 more players in this tournament who had relatively close rating to mine. One of them was international master with a 2450 rating, and one of them was a player. I think he's a FIDE master, but he is a very much specialist in fast time control. So maybe his Blitz rating is actually perhaps even close to mine. So in order to win this tournament, I really had to win or at least make good results against these 2 guys and win the rest. So the first couple of rounds were fairly easy, almost no interesting moments there. The interest started at round number 3. I faced with the black pieces, actually one of my own students, a very talented young kid by the name of Benny from Israel. He is about 12 years old, already having almost 2100 rating, and I consider him to be one of the most talented players, the young players in Israel. But he misplayed here the opening a bit. Okay, obviously it's a fast time control. It's not easy to recall analysis of openings. We reached this position after 11 moves. We can see that white already is facing some small problems in this position. The black queen is attacking his pawn, but also the black queen is hindering some potential castling for white, so whenever he's trying to castle he gets hammered with this check. So I think Benny played a very practical move here. He played knight d2, just focusing on the development, sacrificing the pawn on b2 instead of playing passive. For example, I think a move like b3 would be just very bad. Amongst others, I can just ignore it and keep my development. And because white cannot castle, this means that his position is going to be very difficult for a long time. Also, a small notice, if white plays the move c3, I have a little nice tactical shot. So queen takes b2, and if he takes back, I can take the bishop, and that's a double attack, and I win a lot of material. So he played knight d2, which I consider to be a very good practical choice. And at this point, I could take the pawn, and the engine said this move is fine, is okay. But then, once my queen is not on this diagonal, this allows him to castle. And once he's castled, even though I'm a pawn up, at least white can kind of breathe. He managed to castle. He won't get under any immediate attack, and he also has some prospects of attacking me with a move like f5 at a good point. So I don't really think this is recommendable. I think I chose a sensible move. I just kept my development castling. I wanted to keep the pressure on this diagonal and on this pawn. As sometimes we say, the threat is sometimes stronger than its execution. He now played a very good move, knight b3, blocking my queen from getting into the b2 pawn, and also trying to exchange some pieces, which is sensible when you're under pressure and you want to get some, liberate some of your pieces, trade some pieces off to get some more space for the remaining pieces. And here actually was a very critical moment in this game. I very quickly decided to take off his bishop on d3, which is a sensible move because his bishop is quite an active piece pointing towards my king. But once I did it, he took back with the pawn and he got this open c file to operate on, and it was difficult for me to break through. After the game, once again looking with the engine, he suggested a move I maybe for a second I considered it, but thought it's too artificial. He just suggests making a very paradoxical move, which is knight d8. And the idea is to push the c pawn forward to use the fact that these pieces have the potential to be forked. And if white tries to make the move castle possible with a move like queen f2, I still go c5 with the threat of c4, and whenever white counters this move with the move c4, trying to stop it, I have this sequence of moves: pawn takes c4, bishop takes c4, queen b4 check, a double attack. White is forced to go knight d2 to protect the bishop, and after knight b6 attacking this bishop, b3, now a very important move is rook d8, developing the rook while also creating pressure against the knight, which ensures that I will be able to keep his king in the center, at least for the time being. And once again, the battle here is for and against castling. If he manages to castle, he will be fine. But if I manage to deny that option, he might be stuck in the middle of the board for a very long time and get under a very serious attack. So this was a missed chance by me, this knight d7 move. And in the actual game, after knight takes d3, my advantage actually was only marginal at the rest of the game. He took with the c pawn as mentioned. I played f6, a sensible move, trying to open up a file against his king. But he played in a very cool manner, played rook c1. I now played rook b8, developing the rook into the game. Rook c5 now was a nice move by him, trying once again to block off my queen, getting and enabling the move castling. And after pawn takes c5, queen takes c5, I had this little tactic with queen b4 check. But even after this, rook c3, queen takes f4. It's not even winning a pawn because he can take on c6 at the end of the variation. And even though in this position black is still marginally better because he has the bishop versus the knight, which in the end game in a position, an open type position, this bishop maybe can maneuver itself into a stronger square. I didn't have any significant advantage throughout the game, and I only managed to win on time eventually. I want to mention that this tournament was played in a time control of 10+0, which means there is no increment. And if you get under time trouble, you are in a very serious trouble because you don't have the increment to try and escape the time trouble. So this was a fairly important game for me to win. The next round was one of the most entertaining games I played in this tournament, or at least it could be. It started with a very calm London defense. My opponent, I just played the move queen b6 in order to attack the pawn on b2. And now my opponent didn't even try to defend the pawn on b2, played knight g5, trying to get this bishop on e6. I played here bishop d5, counter-attacking his pawn on g2, also escaping the threat from this pawn. Now I played e4. And now I was thinking for a fairly long time, and when I say a long time, I mean relatively to a Blitz game. I thought maybe for 1 or 2 minutes here about my next move because I had so many tempting options, but I just didn't have enough time to calculate most of them. But I wanted to present you with some of these very interesting options that I had, which I chose eventually not to go to because I felt they were a bit, let's say, unclear or edgy, and since this game was fairly important to the tournament standings. By the way, this game was played against the second seed, the International Master. That it was very important. It was a very important game. So one option, the obvious move is just retreating the bishop to c6, which is what I chose to play eventually. But I had a lot of kind of small, sneaky, intermediate moves here. One of them being h6. The point is basically to drive this knight away, let's say knight f3. And now this pawn is just hanging, so I can take it. So after the move h6, he is forced to take my bishop. And now, what I have missed during the game, I also only considered the move pawn takes g5, which is the obvious move. But I missed the fact that I can play this another intermediate move, knight takes d5. So at the moment I am a piece down, but both of his pieces are hanging. So he has to play something like, let's say, bishop g3, and then I can take his knight. After which, the position remains interesting because black has some material advantage here, but white gets a lot of activity, knight c4, that's a tempo against my queen has to retreat. Also, he has the two bishops advantage, so this position is fairly interesting, I would say unclear. That's one interesting option that black has, is h6. Much sharper option is the move I did consider very seriously, is queen takes b2. Simply going for pawns. So now it takes on d5, I take pawn, this is the second pawn I take, but you see it's also a double attack against the bishop and the pawn on c3. And I consider now, since the threat of knight takes c3 is very strong, he probably has to play rook b1, an intermediate move, force the queen to take on c3, thus denying me from playing knight c3 later on. And after something like bishop h2, pawn takes d4, castling, we get a very curious position. I have 4 pawns versus 1 piece, but I still considered this position to be actually favorable for white, because I thought his piece is more significant than my 4 pawns, because he has the open file, he has some activity with his light squared pieces, maybe this square for the knight. So I just decided not to go for this sequence, even though the engine says this position is about equal, but nevertheless I didn't feel too comfortable about it. But who knows, maybe this position would be interesting to play. And maybe the last option at this moment is to take this pawn, which is also very interesting. This move I didn't consider so seriously. The point is, after pawn takes d5, knight takes d5. It's a similar idea to taking on b2, just that here I want to take his pawns with my pawn. That's the main advantage of this. And once again, the engine shows the variations such as knight c4, a very important intermediate move, keeping everything defended. Queen c6. His bishop is under attack, and here, for some reason, the engine says that the best move is actually bishop c1, which is, I think, almost impossible move for a human to play, just getting the bishop into its initial position. And after pawn takes c3, just to castle. And this position is, once again, black has tons of pawns for his piece, but I consider it still to be slightly better for white. Those bishops has a lot of potential. This pawn, he can take on b2, but he's not going to reach anywhere significant. Still, engine evaluates this position as almost equal, maybe just a little bit better for white. But once again, this didn't happen. I eventually, after some consideration, I chose to go for the kind of more obvious, more safe move, bishop c6. After which, actually, white did get a slight space advantage after knight c4, queen d8, d5, bishop b5. We had this kind of King's Indian type structure where white is having probably some small advantage, but I managed to hold the draw here fairly comfortably. So this game I drew. And the last game out of the 6, which was very critical, was actually this one. So I played with the black pieces, and I played against the third seed, which I had to win. And this was the last round, and I had to win this game. in order to be still in contention of winning first place. And in this position his queen is under attack, and he had to take on d4 at this point, but he chose to play the move queen g2, which is a very sensible move. He's trying to maybe think about some attack on the king side with a move such as g5, but he missed some very nice tactic here. So at this point black is to play and black to play and win. It's a fairly nice tactical shot here. You might try to find it yourself. It's the move knight takes c2, kind of out of nowhere. Knight takes c2, and the point that if the king takes, I have this check on b4, and white has three legal moves: king c3, king c1, and king b1. If he plays king c3, it's just checkmate in one move. That's fairly easy. If he goes king c1, I have this quiet move queen d3, threatening checkmate on c2, but also checkmate on a2, and white just cannot defend from both of these threats. And the most important point perhaps is that if it goes king b1, I have a smothered checkmate in a very famous kind of template here: queen d3 check, king a1, knight c2, king b1, knight a3 check, king a1, queen b1 check, rook takes b1, and knight c2 checkmate. And by this black wins the game. So what happened in the actual game, that after I took on c2, he realized that he cannot take back, and he just played some other move. But since this c2 pawn was gone, it meant that his king position was extremely unsafe, and I actually won fairly quickly from this point. The game, at some point I managed to plant one of my knights on d3, and the rest was fairly easy. So I will put the final results from the site chess results on the description if you want to check it out. I really hope you enjoyed this small review of this chess tournament that I've played, and hope to see you next time in the next videos. See you guys.